What's up YouTubers, Johnny DIY here. Alright, today I'm going to be showing you guys how to replace the front and rear brake pads on your Honda 2017 Plus, Civic, CRV, HRV, Pilot, Accord, any of those models of Honda. If you guys are new to my channel, do me a favor, click the subscribe and the notification bell so you can get all my new videos. Alright, let's get to this one. Today specifically, we're going to be working on a 2017 CRV. Okay, so before we jack it up, we want to go ahead and put on our parking brake. Then we're going to go ahead and chock the rear wheels. Then we're going to go ahead and jack up the front, then the rear. Then we can slide our jack stands underneath. Now before I forget, let's go ahead and take the parking brake off now. You'll see why when we get to the back brakes. Now we can go ahead and take the wheels off, and you're going to have to find your little Honda lock key if you have a locking lug nut. Go ahead and work on the front brakes first. Here's our rotor, here's our caliper on the right side. Before we get into it and I forget, get yourself some of this copper anti-seize. I'll go ahead and put some links down in the description to all the tools and supplies I'm using today for you guys. And we're going to go ahead and put some on the lug studs. That'll help them from seizing up. And then go ahead and put some around here, right around the hub where the rotor meets the hub. This is especially important when you're replacing your rotors. This will keep the two from seizing together and resting. And then you can put a little right here where your wheels back up onto the rotor. So really this is going to be the same job on any car with calipers. A few differences, but on any new Honda it'll be about the same thing. First thing we're going to do is we're going to loosen this bolt right here. This just holds the brake line on. You're always going to want to do this. Take that out. That's a 12 millimeter. It may be in a different location. Usually it's right around here. You'll see it. Just follow the brake line. That's just going to give us the slack in our brake lines once we open this up. Okay, if we come around to the back of the rotor, right here and right here, the caliper slide pin bolts, these are what we're going to be loosening first. Now, if you have a Civic and other Hondas, I know they have a dust cover over this. You just go ahead and pop that off. Hands or a flathead. These two larger bolts, if you can see down there and up here, these are going to be your caliper mounting bolts. Go ahead and remove those if you were going to be, let's say, changing out your rotors or your calipers. Okay, so let's go ahead and crack both of those loose. These are 14 millimeter. You can put a breaker bar. Crack that loose. I know on Civics they actually use an Allen head for the caliper slide pin, so you're going to need to get a set of these Allen head sockets. Just break this bottom one loose, but leave that one in. We'll go ahead and take this top one out. There we go. Then you're going to want to get a bungee cord and go ahead and hook it up here to your springs. There we go. And then go ahead and hook your bungee right to that. That'll keep it from drooping down and stretching out the line. Now we have access to our brake pads. You get a flathead screwdriver, you can just go ahead and put it between the rotor and the pad. Gently just push it out. And the same thing to the back, just gently pry it, pull it out. Now we can go ahead and inspect them. They still have quite a bit of life left on them, but I got about 80,000 miles on it, so I figured I may as well switch them out. We'll go ahead and give this piston a nice cleaning. You can go ahead and pop out these brake clips if your new pads came with new ones. You can just clean and reuse these ones, but sometimes it's best to just take them out, especially if yours comes with them. Just remember how they were on. Take our new ones, flip those in. If it's really dirty and mucked up, you can go ahead and wire brush this area. These just snap back in, top ones too. Okay, now if we check out the old pads, they come with these funny little clips on the end of the pads. And you're going to want to take your new ones, and sometimes your new ones will come with those little clips, and you're going to have to put those on. If they didn't come with the clips, you can go ahead and clean these and transfer these from the old ones to the new ones. Okay, so just look at your old brake pads and you'll know the orientation, but you're just going to put the clip right on there. And the trick is, use a screwdriver like this, and you're going to press down to get it to clip on. It's kind of a pain, but they kind of snap in. So if you look at both of these front pads, you're going to see this little metal thing, and that's just a wear indicator. So when these wear out all the way down there, it'll start squealing. This goes on the back side of the rotor. Okay, now if you look at the pad, one side's going to be curved, and that's going to be the side that lines up with this curved edge of the rotor. Before we slide the pad in, go ahead and get some of this brake grease, this special brake lubricant. I'll make sure I put links down in the description to this, but you're just going to want to put a little bit of this, tiny bit of this grease right on the ears of the pads. These are contact points, and this will just help it from binding or anything. Or careful not to get any grease on the base of the pad. And then we're just going to slide it in, kind of guide it in from the back first. There we go, and these little clips kind of spring. And grease the ears on the back too, and then also put a little tiny grease right in the middle and wipe it around. That's going to keep the piston on the caliper from sticking to the back of the pad. Now slipping in the back one's the same. You're going to line up the curve on the back, and the back's the one with the little indicator like I showed you. It's a little more fiddly in the back. Alright, so the back one goes in the same. You kind of got to get that back edge in first and then feed it in. You'll know you have them in. They're kind of springy like this. That's what those little clips do, is provide the tension. Okay, now we need to compress the caliper piston because our new pads are going to take up more space. So we'll go ahead and put our old pad right there. You could use a C-clamp or some big pliers. You can use one of these little brake tools. They're only a few bucks. Link in description. But you're just going to compress it slowly. That's going to push that piston back in until it bottoms out. Now we can go ahead and put this back in. Squeeze those springy pads in, and then you got to jiggle the caliper a little bit, and then it should slide in. There you go. Actually, before we close it up all the way, go ahead and pull this caliper slide pin. You kind of got to separate it from the boot. Sometimes you got to wedge a little flathead in there just to break the seal. If you turn while you spin, it comes out easier. You're going to want to go ahead and clean that up with a clean rag. We're going to put that same brake grease on and just rub it all over it. Then we're going to slide that pin back in the boot, and just go ahead and slide it in and out a couple times, and then when you push it in, it should snap into that boot. And you're going to do the same thing to the bottom one. It's just easier to do them one at a time. Okay, I just lubed up the bottom slide pin. Now we can go ahead and close that up, and then we'll put the bolts in. And I like to put anti-seize on all these bolts because they like to corrode. Okay, now we're going to torque these slide pin bolts, just those two down, and those get torqued to 37 foot-pounds. Go ahead and check your specific model. There we go. Okay, then we just want to put that brake line bracket back on. And that doesn't need to be torqued down specifically. Just snug this down. There we go. Okay, now you can double check your work, and this front end is all good. We will do the back tomorrow when we have a little more light. Okay, now let's come over to the rear brakes, and if we start over on the right side, first thing we're going to do is disconnect that brake line like we did in the front. That's just the same thing, 12 millimeter. Okay, now before we actually start taking the pads out and everything, what we need to do is first make sure your parking brake is off. These 2017 and newer Hondas, as well as other cars, are equipped with these electronic parking brakes instead of the manual cable type parking brake systems. And it's located right here. The motor just spins the piston. What we need to do is we have to disconnect this from the back of the caliper. If you have a good scan tool, what you can do is put this in working mode and it'll retract it with the computer. But we're going to do this manually because I don't have a scan tool right now. Now this is the correct way to retract it as per the factory instructions manually. You don't want to do it any other way. Risk breaking your actuator or the whole assembly, and it can end up being a big cost. So just follow these steps. So you're going to need a number 5 metric Allen key, or I've got one set up here on the ratchet. It'll make things easier. And if you come back here, this black housing, that is the actuator. Here's one of the Allen keys. And back here down on the bottom right here is the second Allen key. There's just 2 of them. They're held on by Loctite, so they're going to be pretty tight on there. We're just going to go ahead and take it all the way out. Top and the bottom one. So you can see there's blue Loctite on it. Kind of hard to see the back one, but... there we go. After, you can take a flathead, gently pry where those screw holes were. Just wiggle and pull it back. And then you can lift it up. Now we can see what we're working with. See, this is just the motor, and it spins this little torque spit, and it has a female end on the inside that spins and compresses the piston, squeezes the brake pads onto the rotor. But we're going to go ahead and set that gently aside. Okay, now on the CRV, it's going to use a male T50 torque spit, same size as this one. If you have a Civic, it is going to be a female socket. What you can do is, here, I'll show you on the back side. See, we're going to put the torque spit in there, and we're going to twist it clockwise, tightening it. You can just do it by hand. Probably don't even need to buy the tool. You could, if you find a flathead that fits in there, and on the Civic, you can probably just turn it manually with your fingers. It's not going to be really tight until it bottoms out. That's taking the tension off the piston. There, it bottomed out. Then you just stop. Now we can go on with the normal disassembly of our brakes. We're going to take a 12mm on the top back caliper slide pin right here. Loosen that up. We're going to be doing the same thing. Go ahead and gently pry open our caliper assembly. Open that up. We can go ahead and pop out our rear brake pads. Here's one of the rear pads. As you can see, there's plenty of life left on it. I probably could have gotten another change out of them for the fronts, but I had all the tools out and I had the new pad, so I figured I may as well show you guys. Now, even though we manually retracted the piston inside, we still need to compress it. So we'll take our old brake pad and then we're going to gently compress that piston. We're going to compress it all the way in until it bottoms out. Go ahead and take this out. Go ahead and gently close it. Now I do want to mention, I forgot to mention that you want to inspect your rotors now. You want to see if there's any grooving. You can just run your finger and you can feel if it's really wavy and grooved, or if you've had any shuddering in your brake pedals, then you're probably going to need to change out your rotors. You can usually get 2 sets of pad per rotor, so every other set of pads, change out your rotors for new ones. You can get them turned, but to be honest, I like to just change them out because I've had trouble with turning them. So now it'll be exactly the same process as the front brakes. We're just going to go ahead and pop out our old clips. Make sure you snap these things all the way in. Then you're going to take your new pads, put those new clips on or transfer them over if you didn't have them. Put a little grease on the ears like we did before. And then you snap them in. Now same thing with the back pads, but remember the back ones have the little screecher metal thing on the back. Notify you when the brake pads are almost completely worn out. And then you're going to do the same thing with your slide pins. Then we can close it up and you just go ahead and press that little slide pin in. And then what you can do is take your flathead and gently pry between the slide pin and the boot, and it'll take the air out of the boot because the boot will get filled with air. You just gently do that, lets out that air. Put our caliper pins back in. I like to put the anti-seize on these, but you can use Loctite or nothing. Kind of a personal choice. Let's go ahead and torque those slide pin bolts. Those just get torqued to only 17 foot-pounds in the back. There we go. Now we'll take that electronic parking brake actuator and we're going to gently put it back, and you kind of got to line up the Torx bit with the inside of the gear. Okay, then you can go ahead and put medium strength thread locker. That's what was on here if you want, or you could leave them dry with the thread locker that was still on them, or you can put anti-seize, whatever your flavor is. Then we'll tighten these 2 Allen bolts down. Now I couldn't find a specific torque value on these. It's just a plastic cover, so we don't want to torque it down too hard. Just snug it down. If you're using a ratchet, you can even take off that ratchet and then just use a regular Allen key, and then you'll be able to get the feel. I do want to note that we didn't have to wind back that actuator motor back the opposite way. Just leave it the same way we wound it in. Now the last thing is we need to reconnect that little brake bracket line. Just go ahead and snug it down. Now once you get it off jack stands, you can go ahead and torque your wheels back down. I do 80 on this car. Okay, now I do want to mention that you want to take it easy on your brakes for, I'd say, around 500 miles with new pads and or rotors always. Okay, the last step is we're going to go ahead and pump our brakes, and we're going to keep pumping until we get a nice firm pedal. Then we're going to go ahead and turn our car to the on position, and we need to calibrate the rear parking brake. So it's on the floor. Parking brake's off. Hold the brake down, and we're going to go ahead and lift on the parking brake up. That's going to actuate the parking brake for one time. Turn it off. Then we're going to turn it back on one more time. And then we're going to turn it off again. So twice, back to back. And then we'll go ahead and turn the car off. You have to calibrate it like this 2 times like that, or you're going to end up getting a light on your dash for the brake system. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe and click the notification bell so you can get my new videos. Thanks for watching Johnny DIY. Keep on doing it yourself, guys. Take care.